The classroom was cold as always. Minho pulled his sleeves down over his wrists and tried to focus on the lecture. Professor Talvin stood at the front, his long fingers pointing at images on the holographic display. The professor was explaining pain, how different species felt it, how they responded to it. Around Minho sat students from 17 different worlds. Each one looked strange in their own way. Some had scales, some had fur, others had skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. Minho was one of only 3 humans in the entire university. Pain is the body's warning system, Professor Talvin said, his voice calm and measured. For most species in the galaxy, pain means death is close. When our ancestors felt pain, they stopped immediately. They hid, they waited to heal. This kept them alive. Minho watched as images of different aliens appeared on the screen. Each one showed how they reacted to injury. A Kesrin, with their beautiful crystal shell, would freeze completely at the smallest crack. A Droxith would curl into a ball at the first sign of a cut, even though they could regrow lost limbs. Then the professor showed images of humans. Humans are different, Talvin said. Several students turned to look at Minho. He felt his face grow warm. They come from a world that is, by galactic standards, quite safe. Yet they possess remarkable pain tolerance. They engage in activities that deliberately cause pain, for sport, for art, for tradition. The screen showed humans running long distances, playing contact sports, and getting tattoos. Minho heard whispers around him. Velthar, the Kesrin student sitting 2 rows ahead, raised their hand. Their crystal antenna twitched. Professor, surely this cannot be accurate. No species would willingly damage their tissue without medical necessity. Thune, a Droxith sitting near the window, let out a sound like water bubbling. It was laughter. Perhaps humans simply cannot feel pain properly. Their nervous systems must be primitive. Minho felt his jaw tighten but said nothing. He had learned in his first month here that arguing only made things worse. Let them think what they wanted. Hana, sitting beside him, leaned over and whispered, "Ignore them. They don't understand." Hana was another human student studying medicine. She had been here longer than Minho and knew how to handle the constant questions and assumptions about their species. Professor Talvin continued his lecture, but Minho's mind wandered. He thought about his tattoos hidden under his long sleeves. He thought about the hours he had spent in the chair, feeling the needle work across his skin. It had hurt, yes, but it was a hurt he chose, a hurt that meant something. When class ended, the students filed out into the corridor. The hallway was wide enough to accommodate species of different sizes. The floor adjusted its gravity in different sections to suit different needs. Minho and Hana walked together toward the common area. Behind them, they could hear Velthar and Thune talking with other students. "I still do not believe it," Velthar was saying. "Humans must have some genetic defect. Pain exists for a reason. To ignore it is illogical." "My people can regrow entire limbs," Thune added, his voice full of pride. "Yet even we would not choose pain. These humans must be exaggerating their tolerance," Hana sighed. "They talk about us like we're not even here." "It's fine," Minho said, though he didn't quite believe it himself. "They'll understand eventually." In the common area, students gathered in small groups. Some studied. Others talked or ate strange foods from their homeworlds. Minho and Hana found seats near a large window that looked out into space. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions. A Velkari student named Isara approached their table. Her pale blue skin seemed to shimmer slightly. "May I sit with you?" she asked. "Of course," Hana said, gesturing to an empty chair. Isara sat down carefully. Her species was telepathic, able to sense emotions and sometimes thoughts. It made her more understanding than most. "I wanted to apologize for the others," she said softly. "They speak without thinking." "It's all right," Minho said. "We're used to it." "But it is not all right," Isara insisted. Her dark eyes looked troubled. "They make assumptions about your species without trying to understand. I can feel your discomfort when they speak this way." Minho looked down at his hands. For a moment, he thought about rolling up his sleeves, showing them his tattoos, explaining that humans did feel pain deeply and truly, but they had also learned to live with it, to move through it, to find meaning in it, but he kept his sleeves down. "Your people are fascinating," Isara continued. "I have been reading about Earth, about how humans evolved. You were hunters, yes? You chased your prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Persistence hunters, Hana confirmed. Humans can run longer than almost any animal on Earth. Not faster, but longer. We just keep going. That must require ignoring pain, Isara said thoughtfully. Your feet would hurt. Your lungs would burn, but you kept running anyway. I guess that's part of it, Minho agreed. We feel pain. We just don't let it stop us. Isara tilted her head considering this. For my people, pain from others is overwhelming. If someone near me is hurt, I feel it too. It makes us very careful, very cautious. The idea of choosing pain, even small pain, is frightening. They talked for a while longer until it was time for their next classes. As Minho walked to his xenobiology lab, he thought about what Isara had said. Maybe that was the real difference. Most species in the galaxy had evolved to avoid pain at all costs because their environments were so dangerous. One wrong move meant death, but Earth was different. Humans faced many small dangers instead of a few large ones. They had to learn which pains mattered and which ones could be ignored. A scraped knee was not the same as a broken leg. A sore muscle was not the same as a torn one. Humans learned to tell the difference. In the lab, Minho worked on analyzing alien plant samples. His partner was a quiet student from a species he couldn't pronounce the name of. They worked well together, communicating mostly through gestures and shared understanding of the scientific method. When the day finally ended, Minho returned to his quarters. The small room was designed for human needs with Earth-normal gravity and atmosphere. He could finally relax. He rolled up his sleeves and looked at his tattoos. Each one told a story. Each one represented a moment in his life. The pain of getting them had been temporary. The meaning would last forever. Tomorrow, he decided, he would visit the human quarter. There was a tattoo artist there, another human named Sujin. He had been planning a new piece for months. Maybe it was time. As he fell asleep, Minho wondered if his classmates would ever truly understand humans. Or if they would always see them as strange, defective creatures who couldn't feel pain properly. He hoped they would learn. Eventually. The human quarter of Nexus Prime was different from the rest of the station. The air felt warmer here, more humid. The gravity was set to Earth standard, which made Minho's steps feel lighter after walking through the heavier sections all day. Signs in various Earth languages pointed toward different shops and restaurants. Minho could smell food cooking, spices that reminded him of home. Korean barbecue from one shop, Indian curry from another. The scents mixed together in a way that was chaotic but comforting. He found the tattoo parlor tucked between a noodle shop and a bookstore. The sign outside read Sujin's Ink in both Korean and standard Galactic. Through the large window, Minho could see the artist working on a client. What Minho didn't know was that 3 of his classmates were nearby. Velthar, Thune, and Isara had come to the human quarter out of curiosity. They wanted to see how humans lived when they were among their own kind. Everything here is so chaotic, Velthar observed, their crystal antenna twitching nervously. So many different smells and sounds. How do they focus? Humans seem to enjoy chaos, Thune replied. His skin was shifting colors slightly, a sign of his discomfort with the warm temperature. Look, is that not the quiet one from our class? They watched as Minho entered the tattoo parlor. Isara felt a spike of curiosity from her companions. Should we observe? She asked quietly. The window is large, Velthar said. We could see what this human ritual involves. For educational purposes. Inside the parlor, Sujin looked up from her work and smiled at Minho. She was a woman in her 30s with short black hair and tattoos covering both her arms. Minho, good to see you again, she said in Korean. Are we doing the piece we talked about? Yes, Minho replied, also in Korean. It felt good to speak his first language. The dragon designed for my forearm. Sujin finished with her current client and cleaned her workspace. Then she pulled out the design they had discussed weeks ago. A traditional Korean dragon, its body coiling up Minho's forearm. This will take about 2 hours, Sujin said. You ready? Minho nodded and rolled up his left sleeve. His existing tattoos were revealed, mountains and waves and symbols that meant something to him. He settled into the chair and extended his arm. Outside, the 3 alien students had positioned themselves where they could see through the window. They watched as Sujin prepared her equipment, filling small containers with ink, adjusting her tattoo machine. What is she doing? Velthar whispered. I believe she is preparing to mark his skin with pigment. Isara replied. I read about this. It is permanent. The color stays in the skin forever. But how does the pigment enter the skin? Thune asked. Surely not through injection. That would be... He stopped talking as Sujin turned on her machine. The buzzing sound was faint through the window, but they could all see the needle beginning to move rapidly up and down. Then she touched it to Minho's skin. Isara gasped. Even from outside, her empathic abilities could sense what was happening. Sharp, repetitive pain, like thousands of tiny cuts over and over. The needle was puncturing Minho's skin, pushing ink into the dermis layer several times per second. By the stars, Velthar breathed. Their whole body had gone rigid. She is stabbing him repeatedly. That is deliberate tissue damage. He must be sedated, Thune said, but his voice was uncertain. No one could endure that while conscious, but Minho was clearly conscious. He was talking to Sujin, occasionally laughing at something she said. His free hand held his datapad, and he scrolled through messages while she worked. His face showed concentration, perhaps a slight tightening around his eyes, but nothing like the agony Isara could sense he was experiencing. I can feel his pain, Isara whispered. It is real. It is intense. But he is just sitting there. Minutes passed, then an hour. The dragon began to take shape on Minho's arm, black lines forming scales and claws and a fierce expression. Sujin worked steadily, wiping away excess ink and blood, checking her reference image, continuing the methodical stabbing of needle into skin. Velthar had to sit down on a nearby bench. I cannot watch anymore. My pain receptors are sympathetically activating. This is torture. Thune stayed standing, but his skin had turned a pale, sickly color. My species can regrow limbs, he said quietly. But we would never, never choose to be cut like this. Even with our healing, the pain would be unbearable. He is not just enduring it, Isara said, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. I sense discomfort, yes. Pain, yes. But also satisfaction, pride, anticipation. He wants this. He chose this. Nearly 2 hours after she began, Sujin finished the tattoo. She cleaned the area carefully and wrapped it in a protective covering. Minho stood up, stretching his back, and examined the work in a mirror. He was smiling. When Minho emerged from the parlor, he almost walked past his classmates before noticing them. Velthar was still sitting on the bench, antenna drooping. Thune looked like he might be sick. Isara was staring at Minho with an expression of complete disbelief. Oh, Minho said, stopping. Hi, what are you all doing here? We were exploring the human quarter, Isara managed to say. We saw you inside. We watched. I am sorry that was perhaps intrusive, but we could not look away. Velthar stood up slowly. You allowed someone to stab you thousands of times, we saw it. For 2 hours, why? Are you injured? Do you need medical attention? Minho looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned. Oh, the tattoo. No, I'm fine. Want to see it? He carefully lifted the edge of the protective wrap, revealing the fresh tattoo. The dragon looked fierce and beautiful, its details sharp and precise. A small amount of blood and ink still seeped from the inflamed skin. Thune made a sound like water being poured down a drain. It was the Draxith equivalent of a gasp. You did this voluntarily? You paid for this? Yes, Minho said simply. It's art. It's part of my culture. I have several others. He gestured to his other arm. But the pain, Velthar said weakly. How did you endure such pain for so long? Minho shrugged. It hurt, yeah. But it's manageable. You get used to the feeling after the first few minutes, and the end result is worth it. Manageable, Isara repeated. Minho, I could feel your pain from outside the building. It was not manageable. It was significant. Constant. Yet you sat there as if reading a book. I guess humans are just good at dealing with pain, Minho said. He was starting to feel uncomfortable with their stares. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal, Thune echoed. His voice sounded distant. In my culture, we have a saying. It translates roughly to, pain is the body screaming for mercy. We always listen to that scream. Humans scream too, Minho said. But I guess we also know when we can ignore the scream. This kind of pain, tattoo pain, it's not dangerous. It's just uncomfortable. The 3 alien students looked at each other. Something had changed in how they saw Minho, how they saw all humans. This was not a defect or a genetic abnormality. This was something else entirely. Perhaps, Velthar said slowly, we have misunderstood your species. Minho smiled slightly. Maybe. Look, I need to go home and take care of this. But if you have questions about human culture, just ask. Hana and I were happy to explain things. He walked away, leaving the three aliens standing in the warm air of the human quarter, trying to process what they had witnessed. Behind them, the tattoo parlor's sign glowed softly in the artificial evening light. By the next morning, everyone knew. The story of Minho's tattoo had spread through the university like fire through dry grass. Students gathered in groups, whispering and sharing recordings that Velthar had made through the window. In the cafeteria, Minho found himself the center of attention. Students from species he had never spoken to before approached him, asking questions. Some kept their distance as if afraid he might be unstable or dangerous. "Is it true you sat for 2 hours while being stabbed?" asked a student with green scales and 3 eyes. "It's called a tattoo," Minho explained patiently. "The needles are very small. They put ink under the skin to create permanent art." "But why?" another student asked. This one was covered in soft purple fur. "Why choose pain?" Hana arrived with her breakfast tray and sat beside Minho. She had been answering similar questions all morning. "Cultural expression," she said. "Many human cultures use body modification. Tattoos, piercings, scarification. It's a way of marking important moments in life." A recording began playing on someone's datapad. It showed humans from Earth engaging in various activities. A woman running an ultramarathon across a desert, her face showing exhaustion and determination. Men and women competing in a sport where they deliberately hit each other. Someone eating food so spicy their face turned red and tears ran down their cheeks, yet they were laughing. "This cannot be real," someone in the crowd said. "These humans must be drugged. Or insane." "We're not drugged," Hana said firmly. "And we're not insane. We just have a different relationship with pain than you do." That afternoon, Professor Talvin called an emergency seminar. The auditorium was packed. Every seat was filled and students stood along the walls. The professor looked tired, as if he had been answering questions all day too. "Yesterday's events have raised many questions," he began. "I have asked our human students to help me address them. Minho, Hana, please join me at the front." Minho felt his stomach tighten as he walked to the front of the auditorium. Hundreds of eyes, some not even resembling eyes, watched him. He stood next to Hana and tried to look calm. "Let me explain human evolution," Professor Talvin said, bringing up images on the display. "Humans evolved on Earth as persistence hunters. Do you know what this means?" The auditorium was silent. "It means humans chased their prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. This could take hours, sometimes an entire day. During this time, the human body would experience significant pain, burning muscles, bleeding feet, dehydration. But humans who stopped when the pain started did not eat. They died. Humans who could push through the pain survived." A student raised a hand. It was Thune. "Professor, my species can regenerate lost limbs. Surely we should be more pain-tolerant than humans." Hana spoke up. "Can I answer that?" When the professor nodded, she continued. "Your ability to regenerate actually proves our point. If you lose a limb, you can regrow it. So when your ancestors were injured, they could afford to stop everything and focus on healing. But humans? If we broke a leg while hunting, we might heal it wrong and never walk properly again. We had to keep moving even when injured. We had to be able to judge which injuries were truly dangerous and which ones just hurt." Thune sat back, looking thoughtful. His skin had changed to a contemplative blue color. Velthar stood up. "But what about activities that serve no survival purpose? The recordings show humans hurting themselves for recreation. For sport. This makes no evolutionary sense." Minho took a deep breath. "Humans are social creatures. We compete with each other, but we also cooperate. Many of our sports and traditions involving pain are about proving ourselves to our community, or about bonding through shared experiences. When I got my first tattoo, I was marking my transition to adulthood. The pain was part of the ritual. It made the moment more meaningful. So pain can have positive associations for humans?" Isara asked from her seat. "It is not purely a warning signal. Pain is still a warning," Hana explained. "We pay attention to it. But we also understand context. The pain of exercise tells us we're building muscle. The pain of childbirth brings a new life. The pain of a tattoo creates permanent art. We can choose to accept certain types of pain for what they bring us." Another student spoke up. "On my world, anyone showing signs of pain receives immediate medical care. Pain means something is wrong. To ignore it is considered a symptom of mental illness. For most species here, that makes sense, Professor Talvin said. Your species evolved in environments where any injury could be fatal. Your predators were fast and deadly. Your climate was harsh. Pain meant you needed to hide, to stop, to heal immediately. Humans evolved differently. Their predators were dangerous, yes, but humans were also predators themselves. They needed to be able to keep functioning even when hurt. The seminar continued for another hour. Students asked questions about human pain tolerance, human healing rates, human psychology. Minho and Hana answered as best they could, sometimes checking information on their data pads. A philosophical debate emerged. If pain was not an absolute command to stop, what was it? How did humans decide which pain to endure and which to avoid? What was the difference between bravery and foolishness? Isara raised a point that made everyone pause. I think I'm beginning to understand. For my people, pain from others is overwhelming because we feel it as if it were our own. We cannot distinguish. But humans, you do distinguish. You feel pain truly and deeply, but you also stand apart from it. You observe it. You make decisions about it. It does not control you. That's exactly it, Minho said, excited that someone was finally getting it. I felt every second of that tattoo. It hurt, but I also knew what kind of hurt it was. I knew it wasn't dangerous. I knew it would end. And I knew what I would have when it was over. When the seminar finally ended, students filed out slowly, still talking in small groups. The atmosphere had shifted. There was less horror now and more curiosity. More respect. Velthar approached Minho as he was leaving. I owe you an apology. I said humans could not feel pain properly. I was wrong. You feel it as much as anyone. Perhaps more. But you have mastered it in a way my species never needed to. Thank you, Minho said. That means a lot. That night in the common area, a group of students gathered around Hana as she explained other human practices. She told them about childbirth, which took hours of intense pain but was considered natural and even beautiful. She explained how humans would sometimes break their own bones on purpose so they could heal stronger. She described meditation techniques that helped humans manage chronic pain. The alien students listened with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. Some recorded her words. Others asked follow-up questions that lasted late into the night. Across the university, the conversation continued. In dormitories, in labs, in study groups, students discussed what they had learned. The humans were not broken or defective. They were not insensitive to pain. They were simply built for a different kind of survival. Minho went to sleep that night feeling oddly lighter. For months he had felt like a curiosity, something strange and slightly wrong. Now finally his classmates were beginning to understand. Humans were different, yes, but different did not mean less. His new tattoo itched slightly as it healed. He smiled in the darkness. The dragon on his arm was fierce and proud, just like humanity's place in the galaxy was becoming. 3 weeks after the tattoo incident, life at the university had settled into a new normal. Students still asked Minho questions sometimes, but the intense curiosity had faded. He was back to being just another student, which suited him fine. On this particular morning, Minho arrived early to the xenobiology lab. He was working on a project analyzing plant samples from a newly discovered world. The lab was in the science wing, a section of the station with extra safety protocols because of the dangerous materials stored there. Velthar was already there, carefully arranging their equipment. Thune arrived shortly after, followed by Isara and several other students. Professor Talvin stood at the front explaining the day's experiments. Today we will be working with high-energy containment fields, the professor said. Please be careful. The equipment is sensitive. Minho set up his workstation next to Hana's. They were analyzing how alien plants responded to different types of radiation. The work required precise measurements and careful handling of both the plants and the equipment. Everything was going smoothly until it wasn't. The containment field generator near the back of the lab began making a high-pitched whining sound. Professor Talvin looked up, his expression suddenly alarmed. Everyone stepped back from the generator exploded. It wasn't a fire explosion. Instead, the containment field collapsed violently, sending thousands of crystalline fragments flying across the lab like shrapnel. The fragments were pieces of the containment matrix itself, sharp as broken glass and moving fast. Minho saw it happen in slow motion. Velthar, who had been closest to the generator, was hit by a spray of fragments. Their crystalline exoskeleton, normally so beautiful, cracked in multiple places. The Kesserin made a sound like breaking glass and collapsed immediately. Thune, near the windows, was struck by a large fragment that tore through his side. The Draxith's regenerative abilities meant the wound would heal, but the immediate damage was severe. He curled into a tight ball, his skin flashing through colors of distress. A chunk of crystalline material hit Minho in the right shoulder with enough force to spin him around. He slammed into the edge of his workbench. Pain exploded through his body, sharp and overwhelming. Another piece embedded itself in his left thigh. He felt blood immediately soaking through his clothes for a moment. The lab was absolutely silent except for the sound of falling fragments and the emergency alarms that began wailing. Then the screaming started. Not from Minho. He was gritting his teeth against the pain, trying to assess the damage. His shoulder felt like it was on fire, and his leg wasn't much better. But he could move. He could think. The screaming came from the other students. Those who were injured were incapacitated by pain, their evolutionary responses shutting them down completely. Those who weren't injured were frozen in panic, their instincts telling them to hide, to flee, to do anything except move toward the danger. Isara was on her knees, hands pressed to her head. As an empath, she was being overwhelmed by the pain of everyone in the room. She couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but experience the collective agony. Minho looked around the lab. Velthar wasn't moving. Thune was curled up and unresponsive. Professor Talvin had been knocked unconscious, blood trickling from a cut on his head. Other students were injured to various degrees, and none of them were capable of helping. He had to move. Now. Minho pushed himself away from the workbench, ignoring the spike of pain from his leg. He limped to the emergency panel on the wall and slammed his hand against the alarm. The signal would bring medical teams, but they would take time to arrive. He went to Velthar first. The Kesserin was in the worst shape. Their exoskeleton cracked in multiple places. Fluid was leaking out, their equivalent of blood. Minho remembered from his xenobiology classes that Kesserin could die quickly from fluid loss. He grabbed the emergency medical kit from the wall, his injured shoulder protesting with every movement. Inside were supplies designed for multiple species. He found the Kesserin sealant and carefully applied it to the worst cracks in Velthar's exoskeleton, trying to stop the fluid loss. His hands were shaking. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. The pain was intense, constant, demanding his attention, but he pushed it aside, compartmentalized it, focused on the task. Hana appeared beside him. She had been behind a shielded workstation when the explosion happened and had only received minor cuts. Her face was pale but determined. "I'll help," she said. "What do you need?" "Check Thune," Minho said, moving to the next injured student. "Stop any major bleeding. We just need to keep everyone stable until help arrives." They worked together, moving from student to student. Minho's medical knowledge was basic, but Hana was studying to be a doctor. She directed him, telling him what to do, where to apply pressure, which supplies to use. The fragment in Minho's thigh shifted as he knelt beside another injured student. Pain shot up his leg like lightning. He gasped, vision going dark for a moment. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Isara was still on her knees, but she had managed to look up. She stared at Minho with wide eyes. Through her empathic connection, she could feel what he was feeling. The pain was enormous, threatening to overwhelm him. But she could also feel something else. A wall of determination. A conscious choice to continue, despite everything his body was telling him. The medical team arrived 7 minutes after Minho triggered the alarm. 7 minutes that felt like hours. They came through the door with anti-grav stretchers and advanced medical equipment. The lead physician was a Velkari named Dr. Koral. She took in the scene quickly. Students were injured, but they had been stabilized. Basic first aid had been applied. The worst cases had been identified and were ready for immediate transport. Her eyes fell on Minho, who was still kneeling beside an injured student, applying pressure to a wound. Blood soaked through his clothes from his own injuries. "You," Dr. Koral said, moving toward him. "You need treatment." "Others first," Minho said. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "Velthar is critical. Thune needs—" "My team will handle them," the doctor said firmly. "You have a fragment embedded in your leg and significant trauma to your shoulder. You should not even be conscious, let alone mobile." Minho looked down at his leg as if seeing it for the first time. The crystalline fragment stuck out of his thigh, surrounded by blood. Now that someone else was here, now that he could finally stop, the pain came rushing back with full force. He swayed and would have fallen if Hana hadn't caught him. "I got you," she said quietly. She was crying, he realized. "You did good, Minho. You did really good." The medical team loaded Velthar and Thune onto stretchers first, then came back for Minho and the others. As they carried him out of the lab, Minho saw Isara watching him. She had tears running down her blue face. Later, he would learn what she told the others, that she had felt his pain the entire time, that it had been overwhelming, nearly incapacitating, and that despite this he had continued to move, to help, to function. She had felt something else too, not an absence of pain, but a relationship with it. Minho had acknowledged the pain, accepted it, and then made a conscious decision that other things were more important. In that moment, Isara understood what it meant to be human. The medical wing was quiet. Soft lights glowed in the ceiling, adjusted to be comfortable for multiple species. Minho lay in a bed designed for human physiology, his shoulder and leg wrapped in regenerative bandages. The advanced medical technology of the station meant his wounds were healing quickly, but he would still need several days of recovery. In the bed next to him, Velthar was also recovering. The Kesrin's cracked exoskeleton had been carefully repaired with biological adhesives. They would need weeks to fully heal, but they were stable now and conscious. "You saved my life," Velthar said quietly. It was the first time they had spoken since the accident. "I have been thinking about this constantly. You were injured, badly injured, yet you moved. You helped me. I do not understand how." Minho shifted slightly, trying to find a more comfortable position. "I just did what needed to be done." "Anyone would have?" "No," Velthar said firmly. Their antenna twitched with emotion. "Not anyone. I was hurt less than you, but I could not move at all. My pain receptors completely shut down my voluntary functions. It is how my species survives. When we are damaged, we stop all activity to prevent further harm. But you kept going." Minho thought about how to explain it. "Humans feel pain just as much as you do. Maybe more, actually. But we evolved differently. Our ancestors couldn't afford to shut down when they were hurt. If a human broke their ankle while hunting and just stopped moving, they would die, either from predators or from starvation, so we learned to keep going. But the pain," Velthar insisted. "How do you function through such pain?" "We compartmentalize it," Minho said. "We feel it, but we also step back from it. We ask ourselves, is this pain going to kill me right now? Can I deal with it later? If the answer is yes, then we push it aside and do what needs to be done." Velthar was quiet for a long moment. "In my culture, to ignore pain is to court death. Pain is the ultimate teacher. It tells us to stop, to protect ourselves. Your way seems reckless." "It is reckless," Minho admitted. "Sometimes humans push too hard and make injuries worse. But sometimes pushing through pain is what saves lives. Like in that lab." The door to the medical room slid open. Thune entered slowly, moving carefully. The Draxith's wounds had already healed completely thanks to their regenerative abilities, but their expression was troubled. "I came to apologize," Thune said, his voice low. "I have been arrogant. I believed my species was superior because we can regrow lost limbs. But in the lab I was useless. My regeneration means nothing if pain prevents me from acting." "You don't need to apologize," Minho said. "I do," Thune insisted. "I said humans must have defective nervous systems. I was wrong. Your nervous systems are not defective. They are specialized. You can regrow nothing, so you must function through damage. My people can regrow everything, so we never needed to develop that ability." He approached Minho's bed and performed a gesture that Minho recognized as a sign of deep respect in Draxith culture. "You have taught me something important. Evolution gives us different gifts. Mine is regeneration. Yours is endurance. Neither is better. They are simply different answers to different problems." Over the next few days, Minho received many visitors. Isara came often, sitting quietly and talking about what she had sensed during the accident. She explained that her empathic abilities had let her feel not just his pain, but his entire mental process. "It was like watching someone sort through files," she said. "Your mind acknowledged the pain, categorized it as non-lethal, and then filed it away as something to deal with later. All while maintaining focus on the immediate task. For my people, this would be impossible. Pain demands our complete attention." Hana visited daily, bringing Minho food from the human quarter and updates about classes. She told him that Professor Talavin was recovering well and had already resumed teaching. The lab had been repaired and new safety protocols had been put in place. "You're kind of famous now," Hana said with a slight smile. "More famous than when the tattoo thing happened. Students are calling you a hero." Minho groaned. "I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone should do." "But that's the point," Hana said. "Most species physically cannot do what you did. Their biology prevents it. You showed them that humans have something unique, something valuable." Dr. Koral, the Velkari physician who had treated everyone, came to examine Minho's progress. She carefully removed the bandages and checked his wounds. The injuries were healing remarkably fast. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Human healing rates are not exceptional compared to most species, but your ability to function during recovery is. Most of my patients require significant pain management to even remain conscious with injuries like yours. You were walking and providing first aid." She sat down on a nearby chair, her expression thoughtful. "I have been studying human physiology since the accident. I want to understand how your pain response works. Would you be willing to help with research?" "What kind of research?" Minho asked cautiously. "Nothing invasive," Dr. Koral assured him. "I want to document how humans process pain compared to other species. Your ability to compartmentalize pain could revolutionize emergency medicine across the galaxy. If we can understand the mental techniques you use, perhaps we can teach them to other species." The doctor paused, then continued. "There is something else. The Galactic Concordance has taken notice of the incident. They are interested in recruiting human emergency responders, teams that can function in crisis situations where other species would be incapacitated." Minho considered this. Humans as first responders across the galaxy. It made sense. Their ability to function through pain and injury would be invaluable in emergencies. Later that evening, when most of the visitors had left, Velthar spoke again from their bed. "Minho, I have been thinking about what makes a species strong. I always believed it was physical power or advanced technology. But strength can also be the ability to continue when every instinct tells you to stop. Every species has their own kind of strength," Minho said. "Yours is your beautiful exoskeleton and your ability to sense vibrations. Thun's is regeneration. Isaraz is empathy. Humans just happen to be good at enduring." "It is more than enduring," Velthar said. "It is choosing to endure. That is what makes it remarkable." The next day, Professor Talvin visited. He looked tired but healthy, a small bandage still on his forehead where he had been injured. "I wanted to thank you personally," he said, "and to apologize. I have taught about human pain tolerance for years, but I never truly understood it until I witnessed it firsthand. You saved several lives that day, including possibly my own." He sat down carefully. "I am revising my entire curriculum on human biology. I was teaching facts but not understanding. There is a difference between knowing that humans can function through pain and truly comprehending what that means." "What does it mean?" Minho asked. Professor Talvin thought for a moment. "It means that humans experience pain fully, perhaps more intensely than most species because you do not have the shutdown response to protect you. But you have developed something else, a mental discipline that allows you to choose your response to pain rather than being controlled by it. This is not a deficit. It is an extraordinary adaptation." As the professor left, Minho looked out the window of the medical wing. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the transparent walls. Somewhere out there were countless worlds, countless species, each unique in their own way. Humans were different from most of them. Humans felt pain deeply but refused to be stopped by it. They had evolved on a world that demanded persistence, endurance, and the ability to judge which suffering mattered and which could be pushed aside. It wasn't a perfect ability. Sometimes humans pushed too hard and hurt themselves worse. But sometimes, like in that lab, it was exactly what was needed. Minho touched the bandage on his shoulder. The wound underneath was healing. In a few weeks, it would be just another scar. Another mark of survival. Another story. Maybe, he thought, that was the most human thing of all. Turning pain into stories. Transforming suffering into meaning. Choosing to continue despite everything.